We are recording this session, so I'll say it off right off the bat. We're recording so that everybody has a chance and opportunity to see it with the people that couldn't be here. And just a big thank you for me and from the Spirit Committee for everybody who participated with Gratitude Week. We really appreciate it and hope you've enjoyed it. And so I get the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker. It's Keka DasGupta. TEDx talk on gratitude was recommended by TEDx.com as one of their top 5 talks on the subject. She says that many of us are actually practicing gratitude all wrong. Are you intrigued? So am I. So here's a little bit more about Keka. She has dedicated her entire working life, first as an award-winning PR and marketing veteran, and now as an entrepreneur, to study the emotional undercurrents that connect people to people and people to brands. Her clients have included IKEA, Nike, Disney, Johnson & Johnson, and American Express, and many others. Today, as the founder of The Art of Lifing, Keka combines her global branding intel with gratitude to help people do life on purpose and on their own terms at work, at school, and at home. Keka, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, Susie. I'm very excited to be here with all of you today, too. We're going to have some fun. Really appreciate it. So I am going to start off by just sharing my screen, and I will jump a little bit back and forth during the process. But I wanted to talk to you today about a journey that I went on around the unexpected effect of gifting gratitude. So something I completely didn't see, and wanted to share that with you because it really kind of changed the trajectory of the work that I'm doing today. I started my career at IKEA, the Swedish furniture company, and a lot of the times we would have people from Sweden coming into Canada and working with us. And one of the things that they always said to me that they found very interesting, from several of my Swedish coworkers, was that in North America, and specifically in Canada, we have this culture where, if somebody says, "Hi, how are you?" what do we usually answer? "Oh, I'm fine, thank you." And then we keep going. We could have had the crappiest day. We could have had the most awesome day. But most of the time, our automated reaction is, "I'm fine, thank you. How are you?" And we keep going. But if you go to Sweden, and I experienced this for myself, you go to Sweden and you ask somebody, "Hi, how are you?" they actually don't take it as an automatic question. They say, "Oh, I'm okay. The other day I was thinking about something and it didn't make me feel really good." And, they just start talking about all kinds of things. And in the meantime, for us as North Americans, we might be like, "Why are you telling me this? I'm not so interested." So what happens is that a lot of the time we get into autopilot mode. How many of us, can you raise your hand if I can see you here, like raise your hand if you've ever gotten into autopilot mode. You just kind of say things as you need to, right? In the moment as you go. A lot of us do that. And so in the same way we say thank you in the same capacity. I have a funny story to share with you about that. So in India, and where my parents come from in Bengal, when people want to say thank you, quite often they don't use the word thank you, which is quite formal. The Bengali word for thank you is dhanyavad. Sounds very like majestic, and it's the kind of thing you would say to a priest or to a politician, somebody who's, worldly in some way. Rather, if it's every day we're, talking to our coworkers, and then if somebody wants to say thank you, they just they do this body language like, oh. And so I was in grade 3 and we were working on this art project, and one of my friends from my school came and said, "Oh, I really like your art project." And I just quietly, politely, mimicking what I know from my parents, just sort of like, closed my eyes, tilted my head a bit. And my friend kind of looked a little bit annoyed, and she was like, "Thank you, Keka." And I'm thinking to myself, I heard you the first time. I appreciate that. But she said it again and again, and I couldn't quite understand. And by the 4th time, she looks at me and says, "Aren't you even going to say thank you?" And that's when I realized, oh, the pleases and the thank yous, that is something that we need to do. It's expected of us, in that sense. When we look at our North American culture and our everyday lives, so often we're just doing things in autopilot. We're going, we're moving. We say pleases and thank yous out of habit. Sometimes even with our loved ones, we're like, "I love you, just go," and we just keep going. So for me, one of the moments where I realized that those conversations on autopilot are so different than when we say something purposeful is actually an experience I had when I was 17. And so I wanted to kind of take you back to that moment with me so that I could share with you how I ended up working in this field of gratitude. So I'm 17 years old, I'm getting ready with my family for our Hindu festival called Diwali, which is our new year. And usually during this festival, people light candles at the temple. They can't light candles at home. It's a big celebration. And so as we're hurriedly getting ready, my dad says to me, oh, we're going to be late again. Let's go, let's go. He's trying to corral us to get to the temple. We get to our church, and I'm so excited to see my friends. So I kind of like leave my parents on one side. I go over to my friends. I'm hanging out. The very last correspondence I had with my dad that evening was when he handed me his car keys, and he said, just hold on to this. And I just sort of picked it up in autopilot mode, just took it, kind of didn't say anything, put it into my bag, and I, kept talking with my friends. So my dad was going onto the altar, which is where we have the deities and all the lights and everything. And a few minutes, it probably would have been about a half an hour later, I see some people from our congregation rushing past me, and I looked like they looked really worried and stressed. And somebody said, there's been an accident on the altar. We've called the ambulance. And they went rushing by. So my first inclination was to say, oh gosh, I hope everybody's okay. Whoever was on the altar, I hope that's okay. And then I did a double take, and I was like, oh my gosh, my father's on the altar. And so I rushed over to that part of our temple, and we jumped onto the ambulance. We took my dad to the hospital, and the doctors at the time came back to us and said, your father, he sustained some serious burns. He has a 40% chance of living. We just want you to know and be prepared. And in that moment, at that time, what I thought to myself was, 40% is better than 30%. It's better than 10%. We're going to rally around to my dad. We're going to do whatever we need to give him the support, and he's going to be better. He's going to be okay. Now, my 17-year-old mind at that time, the biggest fear I had in that moment was I didn't want to go into the hospital room where my dad was, and cry in front of him because I didn't want him to get upset. So the crazy thing was I sort of avoided going into his hospital room in the mornings when he was awake and more conscious. And I'd wait till the afternoon where his just body was tired. He'd fall asleep, and I would spend the whole day right into the night with him. But little did I know at that time that I would only have 2 precious weeks with my dad before he passed away. So once he passed away, I kept thinking to myself, this life event, like just it changes everything in our lives. What does it mean? Why did this happen? And the biggest regret I felt in that moment was that I actually never got a chance to tell my dad how much I loved him. And I never got a chance to tell him at the very end how much he meant to me, what kind of father he was, how grateful I was for him in my life. So I decided in that moment that there were going to be a few things that I was going to take away as a lesson in here. Number one was I just promised myself that I was going to make every moment count. If I have a moment to say thank you to somebody right now, I'm going to take that moment right now. I also promised myself that I am not going to live with any regrets. It just, it doesn't, you can't change anything that's already happened. And so as much as I kept thinking in my head, but I didn't say I love him, but I didn't say, thank you to him, I knew that he knew it, and I had to just accept that. But most importantly, I thought, I have to consciously express gratitude to people when I have the chance, because I lost that chance with my dad. So autopilot life goes on. I'm growing older now. My dad passed away when I was 17, turning 18. Now I'm in my 20s. I'm married. I've got my 2 kids, and my mom is a central part of my life. She's my very best friend. I share everything with her. And in the back of my mind, something kept gnawing at me, and I kept thinking to myself, I don't want to get to the point with my mom that I've lost her and I haven't been able to say goodbye to her and say thank you to her the way that I lost that opportunity with my dad. So, I was sitting in front of my television one day, and I was doing some work, and the Sandy Hook shootings took place in the US. It was a horrific school shooting with kids that were in grades 2 and 3, and my kids were at that same age at the time. So you can imagine I'm sitting on the sofa, I am crying watching the news coverage, and I thought, not a day longer. I'm not going to wait a day longer. I'm going to seize the day today. I'm going to thank my mom, and I'm going to tell her how I feel. So I sat by my computer and I started to type, and I was typing, and I was just pouring my heart out to my mom, and I wrote her a living eulogy. And very honestly, this was a little bit selfish on my part because I thought, I care about my mom so much that the day that I lose her, I don't know that I'd have the strength to be able to really properly communicate how I feel. And I just wanted her to know. So I wrote all of this out, and then I drove over to my mom's house. She was watching my kids. Now picture this. So she's in the kitchen cooking, the exhaust is on, the kids are running around, and I am not aware of anything else that's happening here. I'm like, I need to read my letter to you, Mom. So I'm like, please let me read it. So she says, go ahead. She's cooking, and I'm just pouring my heart out. I read this letter to her. And when I finished, I kind of looked up from the computer and I said, okay, Mom, there you go. And she said, oh, Keka, that is so nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I took a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, she knows. So we keep going, life goes on. A year later, just before her birthday, I'm talking to my mom and my brother. And I said, I just feel so much peace in my heart that I told my mom how I feel about her when I wrote that living eulogy, and that she knows how I feel. Murphy's Law. To which my mom says, eulogy? What eulogy? And in that moment, I realized she actually wasn't paying attention when I was reading that letter to her in the kitchen with all the cooking and the kids. So I made a pact with her and I said, I'm going to send you that letter again. You have to promise me you're going to read it. And then we're going to have a conversation afterwards where you just confirm for me that you've read it. And then at some point in your life, if you forget, it's okay. I know that while you were living, you knew how I felt. So she said, okay. I called her the next day and I said, Mom, did you read the eulogy? And her reaction in that moment changed my life. And she said, Keka, I did read your eulogy and I wanted to call you. And to be honest, I didn't even know what to do. I felt so overcome by joy. I didn't know if I should laugh or I should cry. I wanted to dance. I wanted to take this letter and go out onto the streets and share it with everyone. I wanted to take it to everybody I know and say, look at this letter. Look at what my daughter wrote about me. This is the impact that she had on me. And I was listening to her and I was in shock because I thought, Mom, how do you not know that this is the impact you've had? I mean, I tell my mom I love her every day. We see each other all the time, but she didn't know how I felt. But the way that she reacted, how happy she was, how overcome by joy she was, that was the greatest gift to me. And that was the biggest, most unexpected side effect I could have imagined, because it felt like a happy pill to me. I thought, I need to go and tell everybody else. I just need to talk to everybody and thank them and tell them how much they mean to me. And this was the thing that really stood out for me, is that, in our North American culture, how often are we in a room, or in this case, in a Zoom meeting, and we wait for someone to leave the room before we say, oh my God, Susie, Lata, isn't this person just amazing? Isn't he just incredible? I just love that guy. And we often don't say it to the person in front of them, right? So I'm going to share a couple of pictures with you of my mom. Just 1 second here. I'll just move forward. Oops. Can you see the screen? And I'm having some technical difficulties because it's oh, there we go. So that was my dad. And then this is my mom and I. She's just my best friend, and her reaction just changed everything for me. And so this is what happened. We practice gratitude quite often. We'll write in our journal or we'll think it in our hearts. But when we share it with somebody, can you imagine? This is how we make them feel like they just feel on top of the world. That's how my mom felt in that moment. So I recognized in that moment that sharing gratitude, not just keeping it to ourselves, but actually going out and sharing gratitude with others, can be the most radical, most powerful gift in the world. And the most beautiful part about this is that it doesn't cost a thing. And anybody, anywhere in the world, no matter what circumstance we're in, no matter what age we are, no matter what country we're from, anybody and everybody can share this gratitude and give this gift to other people. It is super, super powerful. So now let's look at the fact that we have this little gift, this unexpected side effect we can get for ourselves, a radically powerful gift we can give to others. And yet in North America, mental illness, especially with anxiety, affects more than 40 million adults. And so, of course, in this world of COVID, everything is heightened and everything is even more challenging from that perspective, right? So how can we use gratitude to change that in some capacity? So I do a lot of programs around gratitude in schools, and I'll usually ask the students, if I give you a glass of water like this, and let's just imagine that this is water that represents really tough, difficult circumstances when we're struggling with our mental health. Let's imagine this water is really, really cold. If I said to you that you cannot touch the glass and you cannot move the glass, but we need to warm up this water, how could we warm that up? So can you guys just tell me in the chat box, can you type in some ideas? Like, what would make you think, like, how could we warm up this water if we can't touch the glass and we can't move it? Can we share some of that? Just throw it into the chat box. The first thoughts that come into your mind. Warm up the room. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Louise. Add hot water, add warm water to it. Exactly. And so this is one of the things that, you know, I talk about, and there's research and scientific data that shows that when you practice gratitude, it has a direct impact on our brain chemistry. In fact, it has a lasting impact on the way that we feel. When we share that gratitude with somebody else, we're actually giving them this happy pill. We're giving them something that can make them feel so much better. And it's the kind of thing where literally it's just a gift that's time and intention that we can make that difference with. Now, the biggest thing is this. All of us in our everyday worlds, we're running around, we're on autopilot, we're busy, we're doing things. If I said to you, have you had a life-changing impact on somebody else today? Are you more likely to say yes or no? Can you type that into the chat box? Just your first instinct, would you say yes or no? If I asked you that question, have you had a life-changing impact on somebody? Can we just kind of type in yes or no? Because my first answer was definitely no, absolutely. Love that a few people have said yes. A lot of no's. Yeah, we think that, right? Because we often feel like we're going through our everyday emotions, we're doing all these kinds of things, but if we want to have an impact on somebody, it has to be something really grand. So now let's reverse the question, and let me ask you, have you ever had someone who's had a life-changing impact on you? Perhaps in a big way, or maybe even in a tiny way, where someone's had some quiet confidence in you, they showed you something, they told you something that made everything different. Now look at how many yeses we're getting. This is it, right? People have these incredible impacts on our lives every day, but we often, when we think about it, if we don't share it with people, they don't know. So I'm going to play a quick video for you. This is from a TED Talk, and it is just a perfect example in my eyes of how we have often life-changing impacts that can be in the most unassuming places, and we just don't know about it. So I'm going to just hit play here.
I went to a school in a little school called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said, I remember the first time that I met you. And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, on my day before I started university, I was in the hotel room with my mom and my dad. And I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go to the first day. And if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we will take you home. We love you no matter what. And she said, so I went the next day and I was standing in line getting ready for registration. And I looked around and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision. And as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the Student Union building wearing the stupidest hat I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shinorama, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shinorama. And all of a sudden, you got to me and you just stopped and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me and you smiled and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop and you held it out to him. And you said, you need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you. And she said, I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life. He turned beet red and he wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face, and you looked at my mom and my dad, and you said, look at that. Look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger. And she said, everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm gonna miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, you should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later. A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment, and I've searched my memory banks because that is funny, and I should remember doing it, and I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, you've been an incredibly important person in my life, was a moment that I didn't even remember.
So imagine that, right? The most important life-changing moment that somebody had, and this gentleman, this speaker, had no idea that he even had that impact. That's what happens, right? So think about in your life right now. Is there somebody in your life that you know has had a really significant impact in some way, in some capacity? And have you had a chance to actually acknowledge them and say thank you? Because here's what happens. When we share gratitude with somebody, that is the biggest form of validation we can give to someone. You know, psychologists will tell you that there are 3 key needs that we have as human beings, 3 key questions that we want to have answered. Do you see me? Do you hear me? And do I matter? And when you share gratitude and say, you had this impact on me, you are answering all of those questions with loud flying colors and saying, you matter to me. You validate. I'm validating you, you matter to me. The reason you are here, it's made a difference for me. And so, you know, we think about the fact that where we're going through life every day, we have imprints, right? Really beautiful, positive imprints that people have left on us. We don't often have a chance to really say thank you. So you might have joined this webinar thinking, I'm just going to be listening, but I really want to put you to work. So can I ask everybody to either, if you want to write, if you're like old school like me, grab a pen and a paper like this, or if you are, I'm kind of trying to pretend to be the youngin', if you've got a phone, or even on your laptop, what I'd like you for you to do right now is just write the name of somebody in your life that has had an impact on you that you haven't had a chance to say thank you to yet. Can you just do that? And once you've done that, in the chat box, can you just type in yes, right? So that I know that you've got somebody that you've thought about. Awesome, thank you guys. Oh, I'm seeing all these yeses. We are lucky to have some amazing people in our lives, right? Okay, perfect. So as you're doing that, what I'd like you to do now, I'm going to play some music and I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. I want you to start to write a letter, just a note, a quick, easy note of thanks to say, you know, when I think of somebody that I'm grateful for, you are the person that's come to mind and here's why. You can either type it on your phone, type it on your computer, write it with a letter, but I'm going to just give everybody 5 minutes to take that time and write something. Okay? Sound good? Okay, and we are back. So if you need more time to write the letter, please go ahead and do that. But what I would ask all of you to do is take a moment as we finish up this webinar today to hit send and send that note, or send that by snail mail, or read it out in a voicemail to the person that you've written this letter to. But my challenge and my humble request to you today is take the letter that you wrote today and share it with the person that you wrote it for, and just watch their reaction, and you'll see how incredible that can be. So as we do this now, I'm just going to go back to my screen for a quick moment.
I went to school.
Oh, technical difficulties. Hang on for me 1 sec. My apologies. There we go. Okay, so we talked about this. We've written the letter. And I wanted to share a little bit of the data behind what gratitude can do. So researchers at the university at Indiana University did a study in 2017 where, we knew generally prior to this that there's a lot of research out there that shows that gratitude is really great for us. It increases our positivity. It helps us to see things in a positive light. But this particular research that was done at Indiana University looked at the actual brain activity for gratitude. Gratitude and actually practicing it changes our brain. It highlights the activation in our medial prefrontal cortex. It's always such a mouthful for me, which just gives us such positive psychological benefits. The really unique part about this is that studies have shown that the letter of gratitude you're writing today and you're sending to somebody, the impact from this particular activity can actually have a lasting impact for a month to 3 months from now. So when our brains light up from practicing gratitude, that impact can actually stay well beyond the day that we actually practice it, but far greater into that. So it's almost like a muscle that has that change for us. In addition to that, practicing gratitude, especially in this time of COVID where we're going through so many different challenges, gratitude actually makes us more optimistic and it makes us feel better about our lives itself. And the interesting, correlation with that from the research that was done with the University of California and the University of Miami was they did 2 control group studies, and the group that specifically practiced gratitude, they tended to exercise more, and they had less doctor's visits as well. So the impact that we can see from gratitude is not just even on our mindset, but it actually is connected physiologically to our body too. In addition to that, gratitude actually from a work perspective increases our resilience and our risk-taking for innovation. So if you think about the world we're in today, just in terms of how competitive things are, how much we're moving in terms of technology, the fact that so many companies need to and want to have employees that are ready to make smart, risk-taking decisions to get them to be more innovative, gratitude is an incredibly important practice. This was done based on a 2-year study by Harvard, and it was published in the Journal of Research and Personality. So there's a lot here that we can look at. So I'm going to talk for a minute about charging inner drive, and I have a bit of a confession to make to you. Back in May, COVID had hit. We had all been home for a couple of months. I had a really good friend of mine who put together a gratitude challenge and said, okay, for the next 14 days, each day we're going to do something nice for gratitude and kindness. And we're just going to throw some kindness out into the world and see what happens. So my friend reached out to me and said, hey, would you participate? And I was like, of course, I talk about gratitude. This is what I love to do. So yes, absolutely. The challenge begins, and I'm on social media and I'm looking at these posts on Facebook and I'm seeing these emails coming through about, we baked cookies and we sent them to our neighbor. It just surprised her and it was just wonderful. Or I smiled at a jogger in a park and just, his face lit up and it made me so happy. And I was watching these posts and I was thinking, what is wrong with me? Because I did not want to be kind. I didn't want to share gratitude. I did not want to be kind. I didn't feel like being kind. I didn't want to do it. And really, truthfully, I was exhausted. I was just tired. And I was like, not going to do it. But then, we have that self-talk. And inside my head, I'm like, what is wrong with you, Keka? Are you being inauthentic here? How can you possibly not want to be kind? How can you possibly not want to share gratitude? This is the work you've chosen to do. And so I'm reprimanding myself in my head and I'm thinking, why? I don't understand why I don't want to do this. It doesn't cost anything. Nothing's wrong. And I realized in the solitude of my home where we couldn't go out anywhere, I started to realize, I didn't have the bandwidth. I was exhausted. We had so many pressures all around us. And I, in fact, wasn't being kind to myself. I was being mean to myself and I was judging myself and I wasn't recognizing that my battery had run out. Can anybody tell me, can you tell me in the chat box if you've ever felt that way? Have you ever had a moment in your life where you've just had no more memory, no more bandwidth left inside of you, no more energy? Can you just type in yes for me so I know that I'm not the only one? Oh, thank you, Mara. Thank you, Chris and Ashley. This is Susie. Yeah, see, we go through this, right? And so often we don't actually practice gratitude for ourselves. And so what I've discovered in this process of sharing gratitude is that it is so, so important that we share gratitude with other people, but we also have to remember that we need to share gratitude with ourselves. And that sometimes that's not just a passive thought in autopilot mode, but we have to actively share that. So in the same way we may choose to do a guided meditation, or we may do some mindfulness breathing, in the same way that we make time specifically to do the things for our mental health that make us better, we need to actually practice gratitude that way too. So writing in a gratitude journal, of course, is really great and it's important, but often we've been taught to do that for other things, right? I'm grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my cat. I'm grateful for my boss at work. It could be anything. But we also need to think about it for ourselves. So in the spirit of the challenges we're experiencing with COVID, I wanted to share with you 4 different ways in which you can actively share gratitude with yourself as well. So the first one is find a really great friend that you have, someone that you really trust, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a just general friend, and make a pact with them to say, over the course of the next month, if you hear me putting myself down or talking badly about myself or just, being tough on myself, can you please very gently, lovingly give me a nudge and tell me, oh, you've got to be kind. And the mantra, the rule over here is that we want to treat ourselves the way we would treat our best friends. And I learned this the hard way too, because I'm a total perfectionist and I want to do everything really well. I want to be able to make people happy. I want to deliver value. And one time I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, I double booked a meeting. I have 2 business meetings at the same time. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? And I was being really hard on myself because I'm like, Keka, you're not organized enough. Keka, this is not professional. Keka, your clients are not going to be happy with you. I was telling myself all of these things. And my friend, she kind of called me out on it. And she said, Keka, you're human. We have all, at some point in our work careers, done that. Give yourself some kindness and just let it be. Call one of your clients and reschedule. It won't be a big deal, I promise you. And when she said that, it hit me like a ton of bricks that, if any of my friends or any of my colleagues came to me and said, I'm such an idiot, I double booked, I would give them the exact same response. I would say, be nice to yourself, that's okay. And I would comfort them. And for some reason, the same rules didn't apply to me, right? I was being really hard on myself. And I think there's such truth in that idea of we are our own worst critic. We often have to really work actively to change that language. And sometimes that happens when we don't even notice it. So if you make a pact with a friend and get them to identify that for you, you'll see it in the moment and you can start to change that language. That makes a big difference. So that's one option, one exercise. The second one is for all of our morning risers. I'm such a night owl, so I have to work on this one for me. But if you wake up early in the morning, whenever your alarm goes off, for a period of a week, make it a habit to then either take your phone or a notebook or whatever you have near your bedside table. And in the morning, before you even get up and start your day, take a pen, take your typing pad, and write down one thing that you admire about yourself. Now, this is a way of sharing gratitude because we have no problem telling other people how much we admire them for how amazing they are, but we so often don't actively articulate that for ourselves. And so if somebody comes up and says, what is your strength? What do you do? What's great about you? We often will talk about the things we do for other people. But what is the thing that we admire about ourselves? Let's thank ourselves for that. And I can tell you the first few times I tried this, it felt very weird. It's I really admire myself because, and then it's a blank, but the goal is just work at it, write something down, because when you do this every day, you're going to start to build a long list of things. And that active practice of gratitude towards yourself then gives you more fuel to be able to practice gratitude and share with others. Okay, number 3. The tip number 3 is that we often want to be kind to other people, which is amazing. But quite often we also need to be kind to ourselves. And in the midst of COVID, as we're trying to work with our kids in virtual school or in person, does this person have their mask on? Can we do this? There's so many stresses around us that we often forget to give ourselves a little gift. Now, we often will call this self-care, But I think what happens sometimes is people schedule in, like, I'm going to give myself a massage, or I'm going to do this or that. It becomes an item on their to-do list. What I'd like you to think about with this exercise is where you give yourself some forgiveness, where you give yourself some kindness, some grace, where you give yourself a little bit of leeway. And for me, actively, that looks like, oh, I couldn't finish my whole to-do list today, and I really wanted to get all of it done, but that's okay, because I am going to give myself permission to be human, and I'm going to allow myself to do that. So what kinds of little gifts can you give to yourself every day? At the end of the night, when you're going to sleep and you're setting your alarm for the next morning, again, write that down so that you can start to see how you are actively being kind to yourself. And the last but not least, this one, once you start practicing gratitude towards yourself, it's really so much easier to be able to give it to other people. So if you'd like to, I'm inviting you on my website, theartoflifing.com. I have a 30-day gratitude challenge. So you can download the PDF, and there are 31 different ideas for the full month, 31 different ideas of people and ways in which you can thank others. So it'll be like day 1, thank this person, day 2, something. And so the goal behind this is you don't have to think about it. It's just quick and easy. It's a really quick to do, a way to thank somebody for something that they've done. It literally, each exercise takes less than 5 minutes. But it's the kind of thing that when you start to do it every day, you'll start to see the impact that has on you and the impact that it has on other people around you too. That can be pretty powerful. So with that, I've thrown a lot of things at you. What I would love to do is just keep the last couple of minutes here just for a Q&A. So if you've got questions, or if you've got any feedback, if there's a particular exercise or something I talked about here that resonated with you, I'd love to just have this chance to kind of chat together and talk about things. So any questions, you can unmute yourself if you have a question, or put it into the chat group, whatever you feel comfortable with. And yeah, let's share a little bit of our gratitude experiences and any questions you have as well. So this is the moment every speaker waits for. Will somebody please put something in the chat box, or does someone have a question? And we could talk about gratitude at work or gratitude at home, anything with kids. So I'm totally open, but I would love to hear from you. Now, and then the other thing is that if I don't hear from you, can I be the teacher and can I call out something? Did you hate that when you were in school where the teacher would just start pointing and asking questions to people? It's like, don't pick me, don't pick me. But yeah. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to ask was when it came to writing the letter, how did that feel for you? Can anybody share a little bit of that process when they started to write the letter of thanks? And I see Leanna. Thank you, Leanna. Said you're looking forward to 31 days of gratitude. Okay, amazing. Yeah, they're 5-minute exercises. They're so quick. Little things like, your favorite coffee shop or bakery, can we put a shout out to them and say thank you? Because so often we just go, we see the people that we see every day, we love them, we don't always thank them. So that would be great. Can somebody share with me just in terms of the letter writing process? Was there anything that came up, anything that they were feeling? So just need you to just unmute if you'd like and kind of jump in and share.
I'll start. Originally, I sort of drew a blank after I realized, it was like, what am I going to tell this person? And then it was just like, how am I going to do it? And then as I was writing, it was quite emotional, and then it just sort of poured out.
Oh, see, I love that. And this is the thing, we often think it has to be something really big or grandiose or some really large tribute. And so often it's just a little note. And once we start to think about it, and as soon as we make the commitment to do it, it can take a short period of time, but it can come back. Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. That's awesome. I'm seeing a few more comments. So this is from Nancy. Writing the letter made me emotional, thinking about how much this individual means to me. Oh my gosh. And so, when you share that with that individual, can you just imagine how powerful that will be? Especially because so often the people we're going to thank have no idea that we've had that impact on them, right? So it's really powerful. Scott, Scott wrote, writing the letter made me realize that once you start, it's an easy thing to do. Oh, that just makes me so happy, Scott. You have no idea. Yeah, taking time to do this is the hard part. It is just getting started is the hard part for sure. And that once you do it, it makes a difference. Louise writes, the letter was easy, but I realized I'm super mushy. I need to rewrite it and it'd be a bit more articulate. I get that. I'm one of those people, when I was younger, I wore my emotions on my sleeve. So 7 or 8 years old, when somebody would cry, when somebody cries, I still cry. My body automatically reacts. But I tend to be very, very emotional. And I was taught, like, oh, you shouldn't cry. Oh, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. But I love that you are finding that way, Louise, to just express yourself, just put it out on paper. It's so much easier to just change and edit things if you want to be comfortable afterwards. And I might even ask, like, maybe the mushiness is okay, kind of depending on your situation, but sometimes people need to hear that. One of the things that I feel like there's often so many stereotypes. So I joke about the fact that I live with 3 boys, my husband and my 2 boys. And, I've grown up being told that women are more emotional and more sensitive than men are. And I know that that's a stereotype, and I know it's not something that I want to believe. And then sometimes I get into that tendency, but I do have to tell you that in doing this work and going around to schools and going around to workplaces and talking about gratitude-centered leadership, there are so many people, men and women, who it's a human need for us to express emotion, exchange it, and feel it. And I've learned through experience today, through this kind of work, that the gender perceptions that I used to have, they were taught culturally, they were taught from my generation, but it really proved to me that there's a need out there for all of us to share with each other. And it doesn't matter. We shouldn't be afraid of the emotions we feel. Rather, sharing it is really incredibly powerful. Wonderful. Anybody else want to share? Got a few more minutes before we end off today. And it's emotional, so it can be a little bit intimidating to share otherwise.
I can share my experience with my letter. It's Leanna here. I actually went the TED Talk the snippet that you showed us actually kind of inspired me, because the letter I wrote to the person who I wrote the letter to is actually somebody who I haven't spoken to in quite a few years. Right. But they were absolutely instrumental, because they have made, like, they kind of brought in they introduced me to one person, and then that person has now introduced me to essentially my core friend group. Oh. So without them, unfortunately, we're not in touch anymore, but the people who I speak to on a daily basis now wouldn't be in my life without this person. So it was a very cathartic, I think, exercise for that. So I just wanted to thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And that's the thing, is that we often think that to have an impact, we need to do something life-changing or dramatic. And sometimes it is just a little whisper. It's a little email introduction. It can be anything like that can have that impact. So to be able to share that can be so powerful. It's something that in my workshops, what I call it is quiet leadership. Because, we think leadership, when we picture leadership, we imagine somebody on stage with a microphone, or somebody, kind of broadcasting out to people. But sometimes the most impactful moments in our life, the times where people have had the biggest impact in terms of giving us guidance, is often a quiet confidence. I trust you. I know you can do this. I have confidence in you. Sometimes it's just a word of comfort or a whisper. And sometimes, Leanna, like you said, it's an introduction. It's something that somebody has done that's just turned into so much more goodness, right? So that's beautiful. Thank you. Great. So I think that we've got an extra 5 minutes. Susie, Latha, if it's okay with you, maybe we'll let everybody get off a little extra early on a Friday afternoon. But if there's anything else you want to cover, I am here and I would love to chat. And I will, just as we do this, Latha, as I turn it over to you guys, I'm just going to put up, I couldn't in the PowerPoint. There we go. 1 second.
It looks like Louise has her hand up as well.
Oh, wonderful. Oh my gosh, Louise, I would love to hear. Please do share.
It was actually just a reaction, the clapping reaction, but I did want to just say thank you so much for joining us today. We've had an amazing gratitude week across HRPA, championed and led by our Spirit Council, and they made the arrangements for you to join us. So I'm just really thrilled and delighted that this is kind of like the capstone to an entire week of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Louise. I really appreciate that. I just really want to say thank you to the Spirit Council too, just for bringing me in. You've been amazing to work with, and I'm just so glad that all of you have taken that time to come and join me. So I really appreciate that. And I've just put in my contact information here. So if you want to join me, connect with me on LinkedIn or social media, anywhere. I'm on all of these platforms, but I would love to keep in touch too. So, okay, Susie, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Well, I thank you very much for taking us through. I really enjoyed it. It resonated with me about the gratitude to yourself as well as to others. So, but thank you so much for capping off our gratitude week, and I'll make sure to have all your contact information as well, share it out, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.